Let's talk about Daniel Williams, the 22-year-old inmate with just 2 weeks left on his sentence. He was doing 18 months for a petty theft. Would go missing for almost 3 days inside of the prison. Be hogtied, beaten, stabbed, strangled, and raped. Injected with drugs. And when he finally was found and he died in the hospital, they would call his family and say he died from a drug overdose. This is the realities of prison. It's not the gangs you gotta watch out for, not the organizations. It's the officers and these predatory inmates that are almost like hyenas, right? When they chase the zebras and the one kind of disappears from the flock and they just eat them alive. In a situation very similar, a lot of people wrote comments to me about my friend Spawn. Why did I help him when he ended up stabbing a guy that was trying to groom him in prison, where he ultimately would get 27 years? What choice did he have? Play the game? See what happens? See, in prison, people fail to understand this is your home. You're not a civilian. Nobody gives a fuck, period. And that's the sad part. They get caught up in the dope, the drugs, the gambling, or they're just in fear all the time. Everybody's scared, but to operate in fear is the weakest amount of vibration you can ever have. And they feel that. They can smell that. But imagine the corruption in a prison where you can get hogtied and go missing for 3 days. And after they beat you, rape you, and just completely humiliate you in all the wrong, just horrific ways, they say he died from a drug overdose 2 weeks before you go home. Let's get into it. Daniel Williams, at just 22 years old, was finishing a year in prison with 10 months time served. He was just weeks away from being released. Well, sometime between October 19th and the 22nd, Daniel disappeared from his assigned dormitory at Station Correctional Facility in Elmore County, Alabama. Several days passed without a head count or a dorm check alerting staff that he was missing, despite routine protocols. Imagine that. An inmate is brutally getting tortured, raped, extorted, who knows what else. And the officers aren't even checking to see if all the inmates are accounted for. That's why I tell you guys, 5-minute decision can cost you the rest of your life. You go to prison, this could happen to you, or something else to where you pull a knife out and kill this dude. It is what it is. And no one will feel pity for you because you committed your crimes to get there. You weren't thinking about your victims or the property or all the people you put in danger. So why now? It's a cold existence. He was kidnapped and forcibly moved to dorm E1, where he wasn't assigned. There he was hogtied, hands, ankles bound with ligatures. For 2 to 3 days, he was beaten, stabbed, suffering blunt force trauma, injuries, and head indentation. Sexually assaulted, aka rented out, coerced into prostitution by inmates. Forced to ingest or inject with drugs to subdue or control him, or make it look like this is what he was doing. The sad part is, I guarantee Daniel went in there and was scared to death, but he showed that fear, and he got what's called a war daddy. So the organizations, the ones that are making the moves and controlling the yards, they don't tolerate this behavior. But they use these predators, these just very, very evil, wicked men, as a way to extort weaker inmates, get them into debt. Because you put anybody in a situation, 2 things are gonna happen. You're gonna get this, where they get turned out, used and abused until they kill him, or an inmate's gonna cut his throat and do the rest of his life in the chain gang. That's why you never put yourself in this position to begin with. When Daniel's family finally saw him at the Jackson Hospital, October 25th, they discovered he had bruises from head to toe, ligature marks on his wrists and ankles, handprints, bruises between his legs, defensive wounds on his upper arms, and scratches. Indented skull bruising, consistent with being slammed into a soft surface, possibly from something like blunt force trauma. A nurse and a doctor told the family the injuries were unlike anything they'd seen in decades of practice. Contusions in various stages of healing, and facial trauma, indicative with something being smothered on his face. How did this happen? No guards intervened, despite kidnapping and assault happening in a place with documented surveillance, prison, and staff present. That's the reality. When I hear people say, it's not like that, it doesn't happen like that, the same way these chomos get put out there when they're supposed to be in protected custody and gutted and slaughtered, you could be doing 1 year and be housed with somebody like this. There's no cells. I mean, he could walk up to your bunk anytime he wants and do anything. 1 minute of emotion costs you the rest of your life. Now, this is how wicked prison is. You see all this going on, right? And he's dealing in a different world. So it's none of your business. What he's doing is you got to keep it moving, because only the strong survive. Because we're all criminals in there. Every one of us. There's no civilians. And what they do is they play that war daddy role. It's called friendly extortion. First you get in there and they just try to see, hey, can I get a cup of coffee, man? Or can you help me write a letter? If you show any form of friendliness, fear, weakness, drug addiction, that you need his help because you're too scared to do it on your own, even giving him a cup of coffee, they feel like now they got one. They'll step to the organizations and say, hey, that's going to be my boy. Everything, I'm going to control everything. You know, I'll make sure he doesn't tell, and I got this. Meanwhile, he's telling him, look, you know, they want to extort you, and, you know, it's the oldest trick in the book, right? When I enter a unit, I see somebody I'm familiar with. I immediately have a knife. I say, he's telling me this officer's corrupt. Those dudes are predators. This is a thief here. These organizations are running the dope. Stay away from this person and that person. If I don't, then he's not going to fuck with me. He's not going to have my back when it goes down, because he gave me the warning and I chose to mess with the evil inmate, the predatory inmate. And if one of those dudes he said was like that and was doing all this, asked me for a cup of coffee, I would have to stab him. I would have to gut him. I would have to do something. And imagine, after all that, you go home. Or you don't go home. You think you're ever going to be mentally able to trust or be able to function? See, me, the way I made it happen was through all of this chaos, seeing all the death, the violence, the murders, the manipulation, the punishment, the corruption. I was able to feed my mind, body, and spirit to become the best version of myself in hell. However, I was one bad day, one wrong person away from a life sentence. But I promise you this, it's better to be doing 1,000 years as a warrior than getting an early release date as a coward. As I spoke about before, despite that, no disciplinary actions or criminal charges were ever brought against him in connection with Daniel's assault and death. Although evidence including DNA from a rape kit, medical examiner testimony was submitted, the grand jury did not find it sufficient to meet the threshold for criminal charges. The case remains closed. No officers arrested, no inmates arrested. Just a dude that was about to go home in 2 weeks. But I guarantee this didn't just happen. From maybe the first month he walked in there, he became prey. If you're willing to do crime in the streets, run around crazy, whether you're in the gangs and just dirtbag on dirtbag crime, or you're out here robbing houses, whatever you're doing, you better be willing to kill an inmate. That's all I'm gonna tell you. Better be willing to do 1,000 years. I mean, you went in there for some stealing at a pawn shop, and then with days of reaching your release date, when you would be free, you were held against your will for roughly 3 days, sexually assaulted, raped during that time numerous times, had restraint marks, and beat nearly to the point of unconsciousness, forced to consume drugs while being held hostage in an open bay housing dorm. And then they tell his father he overdosed. Think about that shit. That's the game. That's the world you want to enter. Then by all means, be prepared. What comes with it. Whether you have to do a day or 20 years, 5 minutes will cost you the rest of your life every single time. When I talked to my friend Spawn, who stabbed a motherfucker that tried this shit on him, he doesn't regret it at all. He said, because what? I come home to my family. What? I'll never come home to my family, even if I come home to my family. For real. 5 minutes will cost you the rest of your life. Stay out. Stay free. Us. And rest in peace.